welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another Ranking Friday video, and we are currently in the middle of palette week, so every single day for the last few days or so I have posted palette themed content. So naturally we're ranking and we're talking about eyeshadow palettes today, and I was going to do my monthly ranking all of the eyeshadow palettes that I tried throughout the month of September, but I don't feel like I've tried enough eyeshadow palettes to really make a ranking video on it for this month. So instead, I was gonna film a video during palette week about my favorite eyeshadow palette from each brand in my collection that I owned 3 or more palettes from, but instead I'm giving it a little twist so we can continue ranking things on Friday on my channel, because I'm taking these ranking videos just so seriously. And today we are going to be ranking my favorite eyeshadow palettes from each brand in my collection. So what I did was I took my favorite eyeshadow palette from each brand, again from each brand that I own 3 or more palettes from, because honestly if I only owned 2 palettes, like, you have obviously like favorite a little, but whatever. So the criteria for this video was I had to have at least 3 or more palettes from each brand, and then once I grabbed all of my favorite eyeshadow palettes from each brand in my collection that it fit this criteria, I then took all of those palettes and ranked them from least favorite to favorite based on the 17 eyeshadow palettes that I had. I hope that all of this is making sense. So that is what we are going to be doing today. We're going to be ranking all of my favorite eyeshadow palettes from each brand, and I have 17 of them. So if you're interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project panning content, palette themed content, or just chit-chatting about makeup and having a good time, maybe drinking wine or drinking, it's not even 9 o'clock yet, so I don't feel like I could bust the wine out yet. So today we're drinking my second cold brew of the day, but don't you guys worry. It's Wednesday, which means it is Wine Wednesday, and we will be drinking wine later. You guys won't be seeing this until Friday, but anyway, if you guys are curious about my eyeshadow, I didn't even take a sip. If you guys are curious about my eyeshadow palette collection, to kind of see which different palettes I own from each of these brands, you can check out yesterday's video, which was my palette collection and small declutter video. But other than that, can't remember where we were at with this introduction. Hope you'll consider subscribing if you have not yet already. And other than that, let's get into this ranking video. Okay, I'm hoping that I didn't miss any brand, but it's me, so it's likely I did forget something. It just would not be unlike me to have missed something. Also, I'm currently self-tanning, so I couldn't necessarily bring my... Oh, I was like, do I have a really big bruise on my neck? I swear I don't have a hickey, but it's just like a dirt spot on my camera, like in my viewfinder. Anyway, where was I? Oh, I'm currently self-tanning, so I'm bringing my self-tanner down my neck. Couldn't bring my bronzer down my neck if I don't want to get all blotchy. I mean, usually I'm blotchy anyway, but that's why. If I don't match, that's why. Also, I went with like all cream / liquid products, and usually I'll layer my cream and liquids with also like powder, bronzer, blush, highlight, but I didn't do that today. So I don't necessarily know that I'm loving my face makeup, but that doesn't matter. Let's get into this ranking video. Like I said, I have 17 eyeshadow palettes to rank, and honestly, this was really hard because, like I said, these are my favorite palettes from each of the brands, so I really love all of these palettes, and then I had to rank them, and it was just very difficult. So we're gonna start with the bottom and work our way to the top. So starting in 17th place, I have a palette from Juvia's Place, and my favorite palette currently in my collection from Juvia's Place is the Nomad palette. This is what this eyeshadow palette looks like. I cannot wait to reach for this and play with this in the fall time. I do have an upcoming updated Shop My Stash coming up, and I definitely want to pull this palette into my next like fall palette rotation. I've been working my way through some of my fall palettes, and this is definitely next up on the list to pull in because I just love these like grungy, like really rich grungy tones for the fall time, and I'm very excited to reach for this. But I also tried to take into consideration obviously formula, quality, price, all of the things, how much I reach for the palette, how the color story like works into my day-to-day life. And for me, this is just not a palette that I've reached for a ton yet this year. So that is why. And I will say, I am not like just die hard over the Juvia's Place eyeshadow formula like some people are. It's fine in my opinion, but there's definitely a lot of other eyeshadow formulas that I personally prefer over Juvia's Place. So that is why I ranked this one at number 17. And then coming in at number 16, this one probably would have ranked a lot higher in years past, but I just have not reached for this palette this year. But for Dose of Colors, I had to still give it to the Friendcation palette. This has always been, in any video that I do like this, where I talk about like my favorite palette from my brands that I own more from, I always talk about the Friendcation palette being my favorite Dose of Colors palette. I do love the color story. I think it's very usable, like very like everyday friendly, if you will, in that it has all these neutral matte tones, but I love the pops of shimmery colors. The foiled shades are just so beautiful, and you can also like mix the shades to create even more variety and even more color. So like you can mix the blue with like this pinkish red to kind of make a purple, and they just layer really beautifully on one another. So it is a really versatile palette. One that I do used to get a lot of use out of, but I just haven't reached for this as much this year, so that's why I had to rank this one towards the bottom. Coming in at number 15 is a palette that I've been reaching for quite a bit lately, but still looking over everything, I couldn't rank this one higher than 15. This is the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette. This is what this looks like. I really enjoyed this palette because it offers more color than I feel like we usually get from Too Faced, and a little bit more variety. Definitely more variety in the like textures throughout this palette as well. There are some chunkier shades, like these two are chunkier, so I definitely prefer to wear them with a glitter glue, but they offer a really nice high impact, like really high shine to the lids, and I just have had a lot of fun with this palette in its life with me. I think that the quality is really nice, and I would say it's a little bit more powdery than I'm used to with Too Faced shadows, but I don't mind that. I do like my shadows sometimes to be a little bit more powdery, because for some reason I find them easier actually to work with and blend. And I do enjoy the color story from this one. I've had a lot of fun with this the last couple of weeks, but still, this one would be ranking at number 15 for me. Coming in at number 14, I have this one from Glamlite. This is the Ice Cream Dream palette, and this is really great quality. I just am a neutral gal at heart, so because of the color story, that's why I'm ranking this one at 14. I love everything about this palette though. 4 colorful looks. I love that they're really kind of rich pastels, if you will, and the quality is great. It's not like these super diffused, super washed out, super white based pastels that just don't show up on the eye. They're really rich in their pigmentation. They show up on your eye like they do in the pans. I love the shimmer shades as well. I think the quality is top notch, and I'm really happy with this one. This one would be my number 14 though. Again, just really based on color story for that one. All right, you guys, for Urban Decay, I really struggled to pick my favorite Urban Decay palette. I was leaning towards Naked Honey, but then I also love my Wild West. My Born to Run probably gets the most use, but ultimately, I had to go with the Urban Decay Stone Vibes as my current favorite Urban Decay eyeshadow palette. And the reason I chose this one as my favorite is because this palette is just so unique to my collection. My dog is howling and this never happens. Okay, we're good. As I was saying, this is just so unique to my collection. I really don't have any other palette that is like this palette. These 8 shades in the center are really beautiful lid topper shades for the most part. Definitely best applied with your finger. Really, you're not going to get the impact with a brush, which normally wouldn't be my favorite, but there is just something so special and so unique about these shades. They're beautiful for just really intensifying the look, but then you also have some really great ones. For example, Raw Energy, I didn't like at first, but for a one and done shade, because it is just really more of like a really light lid topper shade, like that almost looks like nothing. So if you're trying to use that shade to intensify a look, you're obviously probably gonna think that's a pretty dud shade. But for this just one and done all over the lid, I love it. So I just think this palette again is really versatile and really unique to my collection, which is why I chose this one as my favorite. Because of the way that I have to use this palette, it's not something I use super frequently, which is why I'm ranking this one a little bit lower, but I still love this palette just so much. Coming in at number 12, I have my Melt Cosmetics palette, and this was another really tough one for me. I thought about going with Rust just because I think that's probably my most wearable one for me and the color story that speaks to me the most from like an everyday basis. And then I was gonna go with my Melt Smoke Sessions because from Melt, truly it is their like foiled shimmer shadows that I love the most. But then when I opened up all the palettes to make my final decision, I had to go with my Melt Gemini palette because honestly, I just love the versatility in this one a little bit more than like the Melt Rust. Although I don't reach for this, like these 4 shades all that frequently, I love the option of having these. I love the grunginess of this palette. I love the artwork, although I love the artwork on just about every Melt palette that I own. But ultimately, I could not go with any of the others. I had to choose this one for my palette. I love this, like these 5 shades just for their grungy, it's just such a good palette. But I do find with the Melt formula, specifically their mattes, I have to spend a little bit more time with the formula, so that's why I had to rank this one at number 12 rather than any higher. Coming in at number 11, I have Lunar Beauty, and for my favorite Lunar Beauty palette, I went with the Eternal Eclipse. And the reason I chose this one is I truly just love this color story. I think that you can have so much fun with this one with the bottom row of blues, but I also just love this row of neutrals. I love a good neutral to cool toned brown shade on a day that I just want to do a matte on my eyes and that's it. And this is really the palette that I reach for on the days that I just want a matte brown in my crease and that's it. I also think this top row of metallic shimmers is just really beautiful as well, and I just love this palette. I love all of my Lunar Beauty palettes, but ultimately I had to go with this one as my favorite. Coming in at number 10, I have my Sigma palette, and my favorite Sigma palette in my collection is my Corderosa palette. I think this is such a beautiful palette, and when I purchased a Sigma Vault that came with 4 Sigma eyeshadow palettes. It came with this, Warm Neutrals, Enchanted, and Untamed. I thought this would be my least used, least reached for, and least favorite palette, but oh my goodness, is this such a beautiful warm tone palette. Spring, summertime, like yes, give me these shades, give me these tones. I love this kind of like creamy shade to use as a base and just really intensify and amplify my looks. I think that the quality on all of the Sigma palettes are really good, but for some reason I just could not stop looking at this one, reaching for this one, and ultimately this would be my favorite Sigma palette. All right, coming in at number 9, I have my ColourPop palette. My ColourPop selection currently is the Limoncello palette. I honestly just fell in love with this palette this year. I think it's so versatile and easy to wear. You're not gonna get the most out of this palette. I wouldn't say it's completely like one noted, obviously, because you have like a pop of blue, a pop of green, but it's also not the most versatile palette. But for something that's just quick, easy, but also can like add just like a dash of fun to it, I think this is such a beautiful palette. I love the yellows in here as well. I took this one traveling with me this year and I enjoyed using, I just like, this is a palette that like when I'm not sure what I want to do, like I think of this palette to reach for. It's a palette that like I want to reach for rather than just like, okay, like what palette haven't I used in a while that I need to reach for. It's a palette that I look forward to using and I enjoy just so much. So this would be my pick for ColourPop and my number 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, number 9. Coming in at number 8, I kind of surprised myself with how I thought this one would be higher, like towards my like maybe like top 3, but I'm like looking at it and I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna come in at number 8. It's my Huda Beauty choice. For Huda Beauty, I had to go with Mercury Retrograde because of all my Huda Beauty palettes in my collection. I would be the most sad if this one went missing. This is not my most reach for Huda Beauty palette by any means, but it is my favorite. I love the color story. I love the pops of colors, but I also love just like the gold and like the mauve rich foiled shimmer shades. I love the different textures in this, and truly this has just been a favorite palette from Huda Beauty in my collection for so long. I'm not going to drone on about this because I talk about this. I've been talking about this for so long on my channel. I don't feel like I need to just keep going on, but that would be my number 8. Coming in at number 7, I have my BH Cosmetics choice, and it would hands down be my Weekend Festival. This has been a favorite palette of mine for honestly so long. I love everything about this palette. It's obviously more colorful, but you do have your neutrals as well. And this gets so much use out of me, whether it be for a fun look, for an everyday wearable work look. Obviously, I have a couple pans in this palette. I have these two, and then I also have one over here. It's like a tried and true staple. I love this palette so much, and this would be my number 7. Coming in at number 6, I have this one from Odin's Eye. This is the Solmane palette, Solmane, I'm not sure. I love this. It's just a beautiful grungy palette, but such an interesting color story that I just have not seen or don't see in my collection. I have not seen a color story like this. I love the pop of lavender. Oh no! No, did I not see that happen? This is my favorite shade, and it was like crumbly and broken, and it literally just broke all over my leg. It's like all over my leg. Do I think I can save some of it? Maybe, maybe not. No. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna try and save as much as I can and like try and repress this. No, this is like a shade that was kind of a dupe for like a green shade out of the Natasha Denona Gold, or even the Bronze Seduction palette from Pat McGrath. Oh, that's such a bummer. I'm gonna swatch that since it's all over my hands out. Anyway, I'm gonna see if I can salvage this. I love this from Odin's Eye. I love Odin's Eye palettes and color stories. I think that they are just always so unique. But my number 1 would definitely be this one, and this is my number 6 in my ranking. And also, in case I never get to, oh my god, I might, literally might have to like rebuy this palette just for that shade. I love it so much. It's so pretty. Ah! It's like a wet gold, a wet greeny gold. Like I'm drooling actually. And I'm, oh my gosh. I have such a mess on my pants right now. I just took a picture so I can like insert what's going on in my pants. I'll put it over here. Okay, coming in at number 5, I have my Kaleidos pick. And this was really tough because I really love all of my Kaleidos palettes, and I think that all of them are also so unique. And just the color stories are just like very interesting. So naturally I chose the one with probably the most boring color story, and I chose Sashimi City. I love this. I reach for this so often. I also love this. Ooh, I wonder how similar these two shades are, because I really love this palette for, they're not that similar because this is more of like a white goldy pink, but also so pretty. Oh, I'm drooling. This is just, this is a little bit one-noted, but the intent, like the foiled shades in this, such high impact. I always get comments when I wear this palette to work and wear either of these two shades. Get so many compliments. Love this palette so much. Don't have a whole heck of a lot more to say about this. It's so good. Highly recommend it. Definitely a favorite, and my number 5 in this ranking. Coming in at number 4, I have my ABH pick. It's my Jackie palette. I was going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on the Sultry palette because I definitely use the Sultry palette so much more than I reach for my ABH Jackie palette. And I think, I don't really know why the reason for that is, but ultimately, I love that this offers more versatility in color story, and I would be probably more sad if I lost this over the Sultry. I love them both so much. Honestly, such a hard decision, but I really love Zam, Soleil, and Dollars in here. Dollars. I'm definitely not, and can't say that anyway. And then I love the 3 matte browns in this palette. So ultimately, when it came down to it, I still had to go with my ABH Jackie. Such a favorite, such a staple in my collection. Number 4 in my ranking. Coming in at number 3, I have my Nabla pick. And I had to go with the side by side. I have so many Nabla palettes. I love all of my Nabla palettes. But ultimately, I, again, would be the most sad, or I would miss this palette the most if this was gone. Love the color story. Love the options just for everyday neutrals. You can go warm, cool, neutral. Love the tones and textures. There's so many different textures. It's not just like a matte and a shimmer. There's quite a bit of texture in this palette, and I love it so much. This would have to be my number 3. Coming in at number 2. Number 1 and number 2 are my most expensive brands, Pat and Natasha, but I couldn't rank these lower, you guys. And unfortunately, my number 2 is my Natasha Denona pick, and I didn't realize that this was discontinued, which is just devastating. But my number 1 favorite palette from Natasha Denona would have to be my gold palette. I love this so freaking much, and I'm so sorry that you cannot get this anymore, but this has this shade right here, which I think is very, very similar to this one from Odin's Eye. Here is the Natasha one, here's Odin's Eye, and then there's that Kaleidos shade. All of them so pretty. You really get such a range of browns in this palette, and I obviously am a neutral loving girl. I love brown matte shades, so I love the range of browns that I get in this. I love the pops of green. I could do without the pops of blue. I'm not mad that they're there, but I definitely don't need them. But then I also love the golds that you get in this palette as well, and it's such a good one. So that is my number 2. Coming in at number 1 is my Pat McGrath choice, and when I first got this, I probably would not have ranked this at my number 1 just because it's so expensive, but truly I have really, really grown to love this palette and would miss this so much if I didn't have it, and it is my Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction palette. I just adore this eyeshadow palette. I love the matte browns. I love this quad right here. I love this green shade, which I also think is very similar to, very, very similar to that one from Odin's Eye. Here's the Pat McGrath one. Why is my dog barking so much today? Pat McGrath, Natasha, Odin's Eye, and Kaleidos. I mean, clearly I love shades like this, obviously. This gold shade is such a good gold. You can see I have a dip going in that. I love this red just for like a fun, just a fun pop of like something different. It's very rare that I reach into this shade, but it's just so different from anything really that I have in my collection, and I honestly just love this eyeshadow palette so much. It had to be my number 1. All right, you guys, after that, that is going to wrap it up and conclude today's ranking video, today's eyeshadow palette video. Tomorrow, to wrap up palette week, I'm very excited to share my quarterly palette usage with you guys, where I share with you my most used and least used eyeshadow palettes from the last 3 months. But I hope that you guys enjoyed today's ranking video. I would love to know what are some of your favorite palettes from different brands throughout your collection. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Bye.